Alrighty, let's get started then. So, welcome everyone to my sort of creature modelling tutorial. This will not be a dry tutorial regarding software. This will just be a sort of entry level, how people can jump into creature sculpting, how to jump into just having fun with the program. So this will hopefully be applicable to any software, so not just ZBrush, but also Blender, Maya, and so on. That's my goal anyway. And thus, I'll be focusing more on why I do certain things, how I do certain things, techniques, logic, methodology for creature sculpting in general, mainly the blocking out phase, and thus also Ark Survival Ascended modding as a whole and a bit more of the creature production pipeline, which can then also be applied to any other game or any other project in general for animation, for game ready assets. Hopefully this will help touch on ideas and what to expect for everything as a whole. Now, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to dive into this, there are a couple of things that I need to just address. So do pay attention to chapters at the bottom of the timeline because, you know, some of it might be skippable, some of it might be quite urgent. I'll try get through it all quickly just so we can jump into the modelling. So, first of all, regarding the creature modelling pipeline to get your creature as a game ready asset and to put it into Ark Ascended. First of all, you should know that currently, as of recording this video, the ARK ASA dev kit is a terabyte large and it is going to keep growing as more maps get added, so be prepared for that. And in regards to software, technically, you can do everything in Blender, which is entirely free. Blender is fantastic. I don't know how to use it because I'm stupid, but it is really a great go-to 3D software. So if you are, you know, strapped for money, go to Blender. Otherwise, in regards to the entire pipeline, so typically it'll go from the basic blockout, which some people do in Blender, some people do in ZBrush, then the high poly sculpting, which most people do in ZBrush, then retopology, which is best done in Blender, but can be done in ZBrush, not ideally. Then after retopology, it's sorting out your UV maps and such. This is normally done in Blender and again could be done in ZBrush. Then your texture work, your colors and your patterns, your normal maps and height maps and everything else. This is normally done in Substance. Again, could be done in Blender. Then rigging, weight painting and animation, all of which is commonly done in Blender. And then during the animation phase, it's also the dev kit programming where you'll be going back and forth and making animations for like your new attacks as you put them into the dev kit. Tons of this can also be done in Maya. I'm not familiar with Maya, so I can't really comment on it, and I'm sure other programs too, but what I've just explained is the most common one that most modders go through. Next up, for ZBrush users, you will see that I have a custom UI, and I just want to rest assured that every single button you see amongst my UI is all findable within either the tool palette on the right hand side, or within the menus across the top hand side. As much as I'd like to go to a default menu to help demonstrate it, this will really break my workflow. So unfortunately we're stuck with my custom UI, which also includes these little custom windows I've set up, but again, everything you see here, you can find within the windows. Just a simple Google will really help. Now, another tip for ZBrush users, and I really stress if you're new with ZBrush, please do not skip this part. We want to change one thing with your UI just to make your life a million times easier. So be very careful of this. What I want you to do, if you're new with ZBrush and you have the default UI, go to Preferences in the top menu bar and go to Enable Customize, and don't do anything else unless I tell you to. So now that Enable Customize is enabled, you could tell because it's highlighted and the whole window kind of shifts. Now it's enabled, go to Transform, hover over to Activated Symmetry, Control, Alt, left click and drag, and you want to drag this just anywhere where you have space. You can see I already have mine here, so I'll just take it off. And again, Control, Alt, left click, and we're just going to put that there. And I'd recommend also add the X, Y, and Z because that's all the different axes. And then once you finish that, go back to Preferences, disable Enable Customize, save your UI, and just save as whatever you want. And then also store config, and this means that it will now load this every single time you open ZBrush. Now, the reason for all of this is that it is very, very easy while you're sculpting away, you're doing your thing, and you're hitting like Control Z, and you're hitting different buttons, maybe like S to open the scale and such. You might, as you're doing work, accidentally hit X, and once you've hit X, it will disable symmetry. And X is a very easy keybind to accidentally hit, and what would be really awful is, say you're working along on one side of a creature, you're doing your thing, you're doing eyebrows, you're making the eyes, you hit X, you've got no idea, you're still going away, and oh boy, a bunch of it just didn't go through. Now if that happens, you can fix it by mirror and welding, or you could just pay attention and it will now show you whether or not you have symmetry enabled. I think in other programs like Blender, this is already visible. I don't know why it's not visible in ZBrush by default. I think that's really dumb. But it's super important. I want to make sure that you guys know this immediately. Okay, we're almost ready to begin. There's just one more thing that I think is worth mentioning before I can finally begin this video. So today I'll be modeling a Spinosaurus, and I'll talk a lot more about the Spinosaurus once we're really deep into this. But before I get started, references. So currently, I've got my reference images on my left and right monitors. However, now what a lot of people really like doing in ZBrush is, so if I enable the floor plane, you can see that there is a plane of the floor, and I can enable the X and Z ones as well. Now it is possible to attach images onto these planes, and if I disable perspective, it will give me orthographic views, and this is really handy if I just do this for a second. It's one of my references. So say I were to then do this, it would kind of look like this, where the image is actually in ZBrush, and as you rotate your mesh, it will show the different images. I really don't like that, that's why you won't be seeing me using it, but this is really popular and a lot of people really like it, so I just want to mention it in case it's better for you. Just because I don't use it doesn't mean you should miss out, so that might be a thing for you to investigate. But for me personally, I prefer just looking back and forth and essentially doing it raw. Okie dokie, I think it's finally time to begin. So, you're gonna have to bear with me on this because I'm not really used to actively talking while I model. So, you know, every now and then I might stop for a breath, or I might just kind of focus and be quiet for a moment. The overall goal for this is to be a bit like a podcast, essentially. So hopefully something that you can just hang out and listen to, maybe look at every now and then, especially while I explain certain things, and just soak up. Fingers crossed, that's the goal anyway. So, in regards to how I do the blockout, I prefer using a primitive mesh approach to blocking out. So what that basically means is I'll be using lots of primitive meshes and use them all separately and kind of building up the forms from there. Now, what some people do is that they might just extrude, pull meshes or like pull parts of their existing mesh and do it as all one big singular mesh. And that's okay. I've seen Huuuuge do that, for example, so it's definitely like a very valid method. But I personally prefer doing it this way because it gives me more control and it does a lot of the hard work for me in regards to like muscle definitions, and I can demonstrate all of that more later on. So right now I've got the rib cage. We're gonna make it a little bit larger actually. We've got the rib cage, which is quite bulbous on this guy. We've got the hip and pelvic area, which is all just very simply shaped right now. Right, and since this is going to be a Spinosaurid, it's only got like a very simple long tail, so I'm going to get a regular sphere, just donk it there for a second, a bit too wide, but we'll fix that. Just going to nudge a little bit of that outwards, and now that I've nudged it out, instead of, you know, gripping the entire thing like that, if I just get like a little bit, I now just have this, you know, half here to grip out, so we'll just do that, pull it back a bit more, get pinch, and we'll just tap it and stroke it a couple of times like that. Because this is a Spinosaurid, I'm going to make it just a little bit flatter, like this. I can add like all the muscles and curvature to it in a bit, but otherwise it's pretty much all it really needs. And just give it like a bit of a curve, that way it kind of, you know, flows off the spine. The spine's nice and consistent. And in regards to, like I said, all the fat and such, I will add more of that as time goes on. So for the sake of the tutorial, I think I'm just going to speed run the blocking out process a little bit. There's, you know, normally like a little bit more I might do here and there, kind of merge some meshes together early, but just for the sake of demonstration, I will kind of go in a bit quicker. I'm just adding more mass to this first. And I just want to make the hips a little bit larger, make the base of the tail a little bit thicker. Okay, so I'm going to show you a bit of a trick for ZBrush users. I'm not sure if you can do this in other programs. So because our Spinosaur has a curved neck, it's got like a S-shaped neck, I'm going to do a bit of a trick. And I'm going to use Z spheres, and I'm going to hold Q. Holding Q, I'm going to add like another little sphere there. W to move it out, and S to scale it up. Make that fit the base of the ribs, make that a little bit smaller. So like I said, they normally have like a big S-shaped neck, don't they? So something a bit like this. But obviously that isn't exactly ideal when it comes to rigging, is it? To the T-pose. So I'm doing this now with Z-spheres so that I can then kind of lengthen it out in a moment, and this will make sense. I'm also referring to my little silhouette a lot because it's quite easy to get lost in the shapes, and I want to make sure that, you know, obviously everything's proportionally correct. Everything's the right sizes. Neck feels a bit large altogether, so I'm just going to reduce that. And I want to add like a couple more spheres just to give it a bit more curve, so it's not very angular. And I quite like that, so that's about what I'd like for my Spinosaur. I'm going to keep it like that for now, actually. So just remember that the neck is currently Z-sphered, and I'll explain why later, but let's charge on a bit more. A really defining factor for Spinosaurs is, of course, their spine. And let's see, so we're going to have like a big Dimetrodon kind of spine for this. It won't have like that crooked M shape. This will be a Dimetrodon-esque thing. So just for the time being, I've got a really cool technique that's going to help a lot of people when it comes to thin meshes like spines, sails. But before I do that, it's important we block things out first. I'm essentially sketching the creature right now because it is so much more important that the shapes make sense, that everything flows nicely, that it's anatomically correct, or in terms of the concept art at least, this is more like fictional type of Spino. We want to make sure that everything sits correctly first. But when I do get to like actually making the spines properly, I've got a really cool technique, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do the Spino as our demonstration. So I think I can show you guys some really cool tricks here and there that just help make my workflow, you know, easier, quicker, work smart, not hard, although I do work hard as well, and just hopefully help. So now that I've done that, we look at our silhouette again. I actually quite like the side. Well, I suppose the neck could probably be a little bit smaller, but our Spinosaur does also have a very large head. So give me a second, I'm just gonna like adjust things. The heads suck. Spinosaur heads I find are really hard to make. So while I just, you know, bullshit this, let me talk about the actual creature itself. So this Spinosaur is a commission, it's a ARK modding commission for DragonHeart for his ARKOLOGY series. And this Spinosaurus is called Hapipalus. This will be an overseer experiment. So this is going to be quite extreme in its appearance. So it won't be scientifically accurate, not by any stretch, but it's going to be quite extreme. It's going to be really quite exciting. I'm excited for this one. Spinosaurs, despite them being, in my opinion, one of the harder things to model, they're also my favourite dinosaurs in general. And this big cracked overseer experiment one is going to be really fun. In terms of actual gameplay, because I know some of you are going to want to know, this guy strikes me more as endgame. I know it'll be level 90 saddle, so it is going to be quite a big, scary endgame thing. Size-wise, it'll be massive as well. DragonHeart's got like a whole bunch of these really cool overseas experiments planned. I'm going to cut this for a moment. Because this is warping quite heavily, as you can see, the topology is really warping. I'm going to go ahead and dynamesh this. We'll do it at a low resolution. Oh, that's too low. There you go. That way it now just normalizes, it kind of remeshes everything, it dynamically remeshes, hence Dynamesh. And by doing that, it just now lets me like kind of move things more dramatically again. I'll demonstrate quickly. I'm not sure you can do this on Blender, but it's one of my favorite things about ZBrush is you can go really wild and then Dynamesh. Control, left click, dragging out in the background. Yeah. Anyway. So, a common struggle I see for a lot of people that are new to 3D is how to do the upper and lower jaws of a creature. What some people might do is they will kind of forcibly hold on, open the mesh like this and then try to sculpt it inwards, and it's just awful. What some people, including me, will do is do like 2 individual meshes, one for the upper jaw and then one for the lower jaw. And sometimes I do this as well. It really depends on the creature, the shape, the circumstance, the pose, blah blah blah. You know, there's a lot of different things. So, you know, no really right or wrong answers, just different preferences and techniques. For this, what I'm going to do for this one is, so I'm going to go and get Mask Lasso, which, like I said, everything in my bars and my UI you can find in the actual tool palettes. So M for Mask Lasso. And it's got a fairly straight mouth. Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this, and, you know, the little good old little muscular bit there. Oh, actually, first things first. Excuse me. I'm going to divide, and I'm going to go ahead and increase the resolution. There we go. And then I will do the divide between the two, and I quickly increased the resolution, increased the poly count, just to make sure that the line is a bit more smooth, because it's quite crooked a moment ago, whereas pixelated. And into subtool, I'm going to go ahead and split masked, and then I'm going to Dynamesh to 2 pieces, and just give it like a quick little tap and smooth it, and Dynamesh that piece, give it a little tap and smooth it. And there you go. Like, it's really that simple, actually. So now what I'll do for the context of our guy right here is I go ahead and just make this bit here a little bit smaller. I think this upper jaw here is normally always like about the same. Oh, we can always adjust things as we go on. Let's see. Spinosaurus have that very, you know, kind of narrow upper jaw, but also kind of crooked lower jaw. At least this guy's got like a very exaggerated shape, which is very fun to demonstrate. Here we go. And then they've got that little notch here, don't they? So a notch is up here. In the context of a Spinosaur, its teeth will probably poke out here, so you wouldn't really want a gap between the 2 mouths, but because the teeth will poke through, they'll kind of like make up for the gap. But I think all of this is just a little bit too wide. There we go. And, oh, hold on. Yeah, like I said, Spinosauruses are like one of the harder things to sculpt. Their faces and heads are so strange because there's a couple of things here that feel wrong in my mind, but this is correct according to the concept art. The Spinos, they're just cryptids, man. Got such strange shapes. I guess actually all of this bit here could be just a bit thinner, a bit more narrow like that. They're so strange. Because they do also, their mouths do dip downwards like so they actually have like that full gap. Now, depending, what you could do then is just, you know, close it all the way. But that probably isn't how it would actually look. So yes, like I said, this is one of those cases where the teeth will make up for the gap, and it will just be a bit cursed. What I also do is, let's get clay build up. I cannot remember if I've already said this or not. When it comes to making any actual mesh sculpting, don't use the standard brush. Standard is the default it'll always give you, and in my opinion, sucks. It's just really blobby. It's gross, it's blobby. Clay build up, which again is another one you can just find in this menu here, C for clay build up, there you go. And can I find the original for this? I want to enable back face masking. I think it's in brush. Hold on a second. Auto masking, back face mask. This is one of those ones that I have actually, yeah, here you go, put it into my custom UI because back face mask is so nice. What that does is if I have it disabled by default, then as I do like really big things, hold on, it'll break through. Whereas if I enable it and then do really big things, it will try and keep it like confined. So point being is using clay build up and back face mask, we're just gonna dig into this a bit. And it just means that if I ever go a bit too extreme, if the mesh gets a bit too thin, or if my brush is too large, it will remain confined to here. It's very clever the way it works. It can normally just reliably do what you want without you even knowing it. Oh, whoops. And yeah, just otherwise digging all of this, and we can do a bit more work on the mouth later. Same for the bottom jaw. Go ahead and just, oh, oops, dig into all of that there. And this again is all things that we can really flesh out so much more later. There we go. And having just done that, it now means that the bottom of the mouth, it kind of sits just a little bit better, because beforehand the top jaw was flat. Now it kind of like hugs a bit, you know, a bit better. And another little pro tip, I learned this from Tristan actually, is let's get a random cylinder. We're gonna make it real thin, hold on, real thin and real long, like this. And we're gonna chuck that to where we want the jaw to pivot. So I'm thinking the jaw probably pivot around here. And by doing that, it now means that my gizmo, if I just stick the gizmo like right in the middle of that, I can now just keep on moving this around. I can open it, I can move it away. Oh no, I'm doing other things, blah, blah, blah. When I come, if I want to like reposition the mouth for any reason, I can't remember what a pivot is. Well, that cylinder is the pivot. And this is something I wish I knew a long time ago. As soon as I saw Tristan use it, it was a big game changer for me. There we go. Again, just one of those things that are really super handy. So now that we've got the mouth in place, the neck is feeling very scrawny. So let's go ahead and just spend a little bit of time then, just to make things a little bit thicker. Or actually, no, you know what? The neck is fine. The head is too small. So in that case, I'm going to mask everything off. I'm going to get back to the head, and in my gizmo, I'm going to enable that little icon there, and where everything else now masked off, I can now move everything that isn't masked. And by doing that, I should make this a little bit bigger. And the head is kind of more like in the neck, I've noticed. It's got really, it can eat some big meals, this guy. There you go. And that should flow a bit better. It is looking a bit scrawny. I'll add a lot more mass to the neck in sculpting. Not here in Z-Spheres because it's still curved and I want it to be straight. But I don't want to do it just yet in case I have any more changes to make as I still build up the initial shapes, the basic shapes, and I'll look into T-posing it when I am ready. Okie dokie, so getting back to blocking out things, let's now get to blocking out the legs. I hate blocking out thighs, they're bloody annoying. Thighs have the weirdest shape, so I'm using a sphere end this time just because it's a bit more angular, but I hate thighs. They're so bloody annoying and they're really finicky and awkward. Let's just try this. There you go, that's probably one of my quicker ones actually. And see, like even from here, it's gonna be such a weird shape. Maybe make that just like a little bit larger up here. So I'm doing the legs separately and central just because it allows me to quickly make changes on both sides of it. There we go, since this would suck to go back and forth if it was like already separated, but now that it is about to be separated, let's chuck it up there. Okay, so this Hapipalus, even though the concept art makes it look like a quadruped, this will be primarily walking as a biped. So this will be quite similar to, you know, the JP Spino. Not entirely similar, but quite similar. If anything, I think this will be more like an adaptoped. I'm not sure if I just made that word up, but where it can switch between, you know, quadruped and biped. I'm really not sure if I just made that word up. Okay. Let's go ahead then, and we're just trying to move things inwards. It does have those chunky legs according to the front orthographic of the concept art. There we go. And just want to shave a bit of that off so it flows quite nicely into the rest of the creature. It is so easy to accidentally make the thighs like really bulbous and blocky. Again, one of the reasons why I hate doing thighs, it's just such an awkward shape altogether. Okay, that looks about how I want it to look. You'll notice I've not done any musculature yet because I'm still just in the templating, sketching out, making a mannequin, really like the absolute earliest phase. I don't always do this, but I'm going to do it this time because maybe it'll be helpful for some. I'm going to add a knee. Just a simple little knee. There you go. And I'll move the leg a little bit more forward. I'll have the knee be around there. We're going to make the calf leg bone. I'm not very good with words. Here we go. This is going to be quite long. So again, it's currently mirrored central, just so I can quickly make some big symmetrical changes like that. And move that upwards here. And we're going to connect it over there. I'm going to consult my concept art again. This actually points quite a bit inwards like that, but it is quite chunky though. So let's go ahead and just fix that up a little bit. I think all things considered, that's actually really tiny. But now this bit here is, yeah, there you go. It's about the way I want it to be, roughly. You'll see that I'm rapidly turning the camera constantly. And that is intentional because it is 3D after all. I want to see how things look in every single angle. I also want to just reduce that a little bit more. I'm thinking that the entire thigh might be just a bit too long as well. So we're going to go ahead and reduce that. Make it a little bit stubbier. We're going to bring that up and we're going to bring this up. We're going to bring that a little bit more forward because thighs are also typically like quite straight from the front. Like this part here is quite angular. There you go, let's do it like that. And another thing that's going to really throw people off during the process is that when everything is in separate shapes, everything looks really weird, especially the mouth. If I was to close the mouth right now, this entire line here is going to really throw people off, and the very second I merge it together and it becomes like one singular mesh, there'll be like no crease here, it'll suddenly just look like a regular closed mouth. And that is a reoccurring thing across like just every aspect of the creature. And the thing I've noticed, especially when working with clients, is that sometimes the individual separate meshes can be quite distracting and really pull away from like the overall big picture. So that's a thing to keep in mind. I think I'm focused on the leg a little bit too much. Let's move on. Sometimes I do get like a bit stuck in, and I think that sometimes, like I just said, you know, you get lost in the shapes, whether it's, you know, the overall silhouette, too busy focusing on the small things, not the big picture, or whether it's the creases, again, focus on the small things, not the big picture. Try not to get too stuck in, try to jot out shapes quickly. Not for the sake of rushing, but because sometimes something might look uncanny until its accompanying shape is with it. For example, portraits. If you're ever doing human portraits, you'll notice that until you add eyebrows, any human portrait will look really uncanny. Even though it's an easily forgettable detail, it will look weird and you'll spend hours agonizing over it until you add the eyebrows, and voila, like magic, all of a sudden it no longer looks uncanny. This does happen with creatures as well, and it can be quite difficult to pinpoint what aspect of it is making it feel uncanny. So this is why I recommend try and just like shove things in, like try and get your sketch down quickly essentially. The quicker you get your sketch out, the quicker you can then like formulate all the shapes and see how they flow, see how the creature looks in 3D, how it looks, how it feels, rotate the camera, you know, really get a good idea of it, and then you can start like really digging deep, because now that you've already got the overall shape sorted, it'll just help you do the details easier essentially. Let's see. This thigh is really throwing me off. So like I said, I'm gonna intentionally ignore it for a while because I really don't like that thigh. If anything, excuse me, the entire Spino does feel quite thin. If anything, I think it's actually the pelvic area. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge. I don't want to merge. Not yet actually. Let's just go ahead then. This is still symmetrical. Let's just like kind of bring this a bit more inwards like that. I think it's just because again it's too sharp, like I just mentioned. The two meshes are separate, so the gaps are a bit more distracting. There you go. And I can always like kind of build up and erase things when they're merged and literally build up on them. It'll make more sense as we go on, but I think that little change there was quite significant. Let's go ahead then, and oh, that's the wrong shape. We don't want the cylinder because it's too sharp. I want the spherender because it's round, but also straight and sharp. Again, we're going to keep it mirrored, centered, so I can make very quick changes on all sides like this, but the bottom of the feet will be quite wide like this. That may be a bit too exaggerative, but we will see. And our little ZBrush trick with the gizmo. Alt it to unlock it, hold Alt and just move it off and let go. And I'm going to mouse over this little green square here. I'm going to hold left control and I'm going to drag this upwards. I'm going to do a nice clean cut like that. Great for hard surface and also useful just for general creature stuff. Actually, I'm doing it a bit too prematurely. Remember this, because what I'm now going to do is, even though it's still centered, I'm going to put it where it's about to be. I'm going to go ahead and rotate it the way it should be. Let's see, just checking on my concept art again, on my references. They do have quite sharp angles. Let's just make this just a little bit shorter. There we go. And that trick I just mentioned, I'm now going to go ahead and hold left Alt. It says unlocked. I'm going to reset it so the gizmo is now locked, or not locked, it's synced to the world axis. I'm going to move it down again. Going to hold left control, drag this upwards, and again, I've now got that nice flat surface. Just little things that make the process nice and easy. There you go. I feel like that's probably a bit too, yeah, that's a little bit too long actually, or too short, excuse me. So I'm gonna go ahead and make it longer here. Gonna do the whole thing again, just because it's my way of doing it. And then cut that again. There you go, that looks a lot better. Okay, good. Oh, minus that bit. There we go. And from the front, I think it looks pretty good actually. Because I like to be tidy, I'm gonna go ahead then and just merge all of these different subtools into the same subtool, but they are still separate poly groups, and that's important because it means that, you know, if I was to, you know, left control anything, I can still isolate them and move them around until I dynamesh them. Otherwise, yeah, I got good control, and I can now mirror and weld them, and we can see how it looks with both legs from the front. And according to the references, that is pretty good so far. If anything, I do think that maybe the legs can be kind of brought up just a little, or actually, left click tap a couple of times. There we go. I think I could just probably bring this up a little bit, make it just a little bit cuddlier, a little bit rounder. And the spine, the torso, even though it is, you know, got a big barrel chest, I still want to make it like a little bit thinner. So I'm gonna bring all this just a little bit more inwards. I'm gonna, another little trick is I want to just bring the whole legs a little bit closer inwards, but I want to warp it gently as well. So not just, you know, do that. I want to just gently warp everything in, but if I do it currently, it will do that, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm gonna do is disable symmetry, just give it a little gentle warp in, like this, a little gentle move. Gonna hit mirror and weld, and there you go. And by doing that, if I demonstrate again, disable symmetry, it means I can do much more dramatic things like this, where I'm not locked into the central plane. There we go. Okay. Having just now done that, I think that the legs are too close together. So I'm now going to go ahead and mask one side off. I'm just going to move. There you go. Keep everything else quite close together, but try and move this a little bit more outwards like that. Mirror and weld. Yeah, that's looking much better. Gonna keep on making little changes. Keep on mirror and welding. Okay. Maybe not 100% perfect. I do still feel like that this leg here is just too, or this part here is too long. Here. But that could be because of the lack of any feet. And I really hate doing feet. I hate doing feet. So, one method to try and make doing feet a little bit, you know, less painful is I've just got out spherender, and I'm gonna get another mesh of a sphere, all, you know, symmetry active, of course. Now with this sphere, I'm just gonna pull out a little bit of it like that. I'm going to pinch it, and I'm going to move it and curve it. I'm gonna make a claw. You can tell I've done that a million times. Actually, it's a bit too bent there. Hold on, there we go. And let's also just go ahead and just bring that bit in like that. What kind of claws does this guy have actually there? They're very normal claws actually, okay. If anything, they're quite flat, so more like this. Right. Close enough. And what I am going to do is kind of define the foot from here, or the toe, excuse me. I'm making one singular toe. Now, like I said, I really hate doing feet. So you're going to see me be a little bit lazy in this because, you know, it takes a lot of time to like make it look good. But I'm just blocking things out quite simply. I will be doing more live streams and more like videos and such in general. I do actually have an art channel that I've kind of neglected for the last year. Been too busy drawing to make the videos of the drawings. So very soon I will have like more resources to help in regards to like certain techniques and how I actually do certain things in a real environment. I mean, this is a real environment as well, but there's certain things that I do need just to buckle down and focus on. I can't really talk about it while I'm doing it. But this is going quite decently. There we go. And then depending on the size of your creature, you might want it to have, you know, you might want to square off the bottom of it. And, oh, whoops, hold on. Might want to make it just, you know, a bit bigger, like this. And then using the little green thing, but not to control, just want to shrink it like this. And the purpose of that is, or let's do it again actually, a bit more exaggerative, like that. Maybe shrink via the blue axis. And the purpose of that is just to make it look like it's really, you know, weighted, it's like got folds and such. It just looks heavier. And this guy is going to be like a really big guy, so it makes more sense to do that here. Cool, let's make the claw, just kind of do that. And then we can kind of add a bit of a gentle socket. It's getting a bit too warped for my liking if we check the topology. Well, actually it's not too warped, I just like Dynamesh. I really like Dynamesh. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's now all nice and squares. That lets me just add a bit more precision. That's what I want to do. I swear by Dynamesh. Some people don't like it, that's totally fine. I really heavily abuse it. There we go. Okay, so that's how, oh wait, no, I don't like the shape of that claw. Let's just make that claw just a little bit thinner. There we go. And because again, it is going to be quite a big, large creature, I just want it narrow from the one angle, the claw. There we go, but still quite large. Make it a bit bigger actually, here we go. Because it's going to be like a large creature that's walking on these big fat claws very frequently. Let's go ahead then and do this again, and we're just going to try and blunten it. It's a subtle detail, but it makes a big difference. It feels like it's quite worn down. And actually saying that, let's go ahead and just flatten everything, because as you're doing this, I've actually done quite a good job if I say so myself. This is like really quite straight, you know, it's even. Sometimes while doing this, it can get really quite crazy and you can like end up, you know, making it really bulbous and they'll look weird. So what you could do is just very gently add, you know, a bit of a flatness to it like this. And then, you know, gently smooth it to clean it all up. But again, if I say so, I've done quite a clean job on the first try, actually. Huh. Right, so that's one claw. I just did one claw. I've merged the two together. One toe even, sorry. I've merged the claw and toe. If anything, I think the claw's actually the right size. The toe could do with just a bit of an exaggerated bit like this. Yep, that's good. Okay. Now I've done all that, we're going to go ahead then. What I like to do, I'm going to chuck this away to a side. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to make a folder called backups. I'm going to hide that folder. I like doing that with certain items, especially if it's going to be like repetitive meshes I'm going to use and refer to. I like doing that for, you know, certain spikes and claws and very specific instances. I just like making a little backup in case for whatever reason, you know, I don't like what I've done, I need to redo it all. Well, I had the backup to just reuse the same toe all over again. Otherwise, now that I've got the actual one I'm going to use, I'm going to remove symmetry. I'm going to stick it here. Make it a little bit bigger actually, about there. I'm going to put it where it's supposed to be, along with the other two. Now, I distinctly want to avoid scaling via yellow because that's the entire axis that's going to change the height. I would ideally just like to scale using red and blue. That's a bit too much actually. I think just a little bit, just a little bit. And depending on the creature, might even slightly curve it like that. Let's see. These guys have very like wide feet, don't they? So I guess actually in this case we can keep it straight. There we go. Just like that. Another one over here like that. Mirror and weld. We're gonna on both sides. And that's our feet done. They're a bit... Oh, and let's just go ahead and move the backup toe over there, just so that the floor is now synced with our creature. Let's see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a donut. I'm going to use a ring. So I'm just going to add like a bit of mass here, around the ankles, or whatever it's called. And I'm using a donut just because I kind of prefer the shape on this. You can just use a sphere or anything else. There's not really any right or wrong answer. I just kind of like the natural curvature of the donut because it goes inwards like this, so it creates like a nice sort of... It just creates the shape I want it to create. It's very hard to really explain. But again, like I said earlier, there's no right or wrong in these kind of things. It's all about your personal preference. And the whole point of this video is going over my methods, why I do things. Hopefully they can be applied to other software and other programs. This is all about the techniques, less about the actual, you know, software itself. Although speaking of the software itself, you know, backface mask we're using to carve out the inside of the mouth. I'm going to enable backface mask with my move tool. By doing that, normally, if I have it disabled, you'll move the entire thing. But if I enable it, I just move the one side. You see? I'm going to do that to kind of a bit, you know, haphazardly merge that like this, and also merge this one upwards like this. I'm going to disable it. I'm going to now just move things a bit more dramatically inwards as well. And this is all making me realise I think the leg as a whole is just a bit too thin. So as you saw, because again, everything is still separate into different polygroups, has not been dynameshed yet. Again, this is why I prefer using this method of individual shapes, individual polygroups, because even though it is now all merged as one singular mesh, I still have full customization. Oh, whoops. Yes, I still have full customization. I can very quickly tap individual areas, isolate them, do big dramatic changes that do not affect the rest of the mesh. Saying that, I also want to just adjust this one and bring it down, and there you go, make that just a bit thicker, more muscular altogether. This is actually a very large creature, isn't it? So I think I might be making things a bit too frail for such a large creature. Again, it's the kind of things that, you know, once I get the entire sketch, the blockout done, if you will, I can take a step back and like really look at it. And yeah, it is looking a bit fragile in a few places. Speaking of, you know, taking a step back and it looking fragile, don't be afraid if things just don't look right the way you want it, because currently this looks far from perfect in my head as well. If you're looking at this and thinking it's kind of goofy, that's normal. It's a work in progress. You're never going to get things right the first time. That's never ever going to happen. So it's perfectly okay if things look goofy. I rarely scrap projects that I don't like, because I, you know, after enough practice, after doing it enough times, I have the confidence where I'm quite convinced that if I push through it, I'll just make it work. You know, I'll isolate all the goofy, I'll fix it, I'll address it, and then things will start to look better. But it does take practice and confidence. I've obviously been doing a lot of these, so while it looks a little bit off now, I'm just certain that I'll end up making it work anyway. Just doing like a bit of lines there, because I feel like it, if I'm going to be honest. Don't be afraid to do things every now and then just because you want to. Right, now the arms. So because this is going to be like primarily a bipedal actually, you know what? I tried, the legs are huge. Hold on. Let's go ahead and mask everything off again. There we go. That's what's throwing me off. The legs are huge. Let's go ahead and I set up my pivot to about here because this is where, you know, if I set it down here, it'll make everything else larger. So I'm going to set it to about here. This is where I want things to scale on and off from. So let's make it, yeah, just a tad smaller and a tad shorter, but I can still make it all bulky later. But I think that fits a bit better. Okay, it's still not perfect, but I think it's better. Right, now for the front arms. So the concept art, maybe not the one I have on screen for you, but the concept art I have does show it being on all fours as a quadruped, but I have been told it will primarily be a biped, and for animation purposes, keeping it a biped will make it a bit more, you know, flexible to work with, I think. It also means I can't afford to have the hands be like too flat on the ground, because that will be a problem for animation. Let's see, I think the barrel chest might be just a bit too... actually, Spinos are weird. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go ahead and merge. There you go. These two meshes together and the tail as well. So I've got this isolated as its own thing now. And let's just crop off the entire bottom half because I like the way the bottom half looks. And I just simply want to make this a bit taller like that. And as a result of that, I will have to make the thigh a bit higher up as well, because that's the way the thigh sits on the thing. Yeah, that did a really good job actually. That looks better now. Okay, cool. Right, arms, shoulders, oh god, biceps. All of that stuff sucks. I love my job. Right. So, these muscles. Now, these are the kind of muscles where it really is worth actually blocking out the spheres entirely. So far, everything else, except for the calf muscles, everything else is quite simple in its, you know, the way I've shaped it out. But this is a part here that I think is worth, like, going the extra mile to shape out via the individual primitive spheres, because one, like I mentioned earlier, when you Dynamesh and merge it all together, it will automatically do all the lines for you, all the really cool like creases and such. But also too, I feel like that you just these muscles here, they just look better. They look really cool when they're highlighted, and they're intimidating. Let me get my references. Okay, so I found some references, but before I actually dive into the deep musculature, nearly got a bit carried away there, let's just finish off our current guys so far. So as you can see, I've just done the arms quickly off camera. Same methods as the legs, so just a basic sphere for the shoulders, a slightly elongated sphere for the bicep, a sphere ender for the forearms, a little bit flattened as well after I place the fingers. The fingers are actually the toes we backed up earlier, just repurposed and slightly changed. So the claws are a bit more curved, the finger overall is like a bit more chunkier around the tip, but yeah, repurposed from the same thing. Now, before we deep into the musculature, so again, I nearly got carried away, I think we need to finish off like the overall shape of our guy, mainly the neck. The neck is right now just a sore sight. So, I mentioned earlier about the whole, you know, doing the neck from Z-spheres, and I've done that because it allows me to really perfectly trace, or at least mimic, that curved appearance, because, you know, even though when there's creatures walking about in the game, it will have a curved neck, that's a nightmare to rig from a curved mesh. So it needs to be straight to be put into a curve, it needs to be T-posed. And using Z-spheres means I was able to get the exact curvature, but now, if I mouse over this green triangle here, I can straighten it out. And by doing that, it means it keeps the same length. Maybe just it loses a little bit of length, but generally speaking, if you've got like a really, you know, big exaggerative curve, there you go, it straightens it all out. And this is amazing for like tails or big curved necks. I did this recently on a Japanese dragon. So I was able to trace the entire massively curved body on a Japanese dragon, straighten it out in a T-pose via Z-spheres, saved so much time, while also guaranteeing that it was indeed the correct shapes. So amazing, would definitely recommend doing that. I think, how do I want the neck to be positioned? Probably more like here. Yeah, so I think that's where I want to be positioned. So, first things first, we need to make the Z-spheres into an actual usable mesh. So we're going to go into Adaptive Skin, Previews, do like a smaller Dynamesh resolution, and make Adaptive Skin. Now, for whatever strange reason, whenever you make meshes out of Z-spheres, it removes some functionality and it's really annoying. For example, you can't merge anything to it, you can't merge it to anything else. Very annoying. To go about doing that, whenever you make anything using Z-spheres, take your mesh, go and make Polymesh 3D, get back to your previous project, and we want to just delete this old one entirely, and append the new one. And now this new one, it has all the regular functionality as should. I did solo that, so as all you can see, you don't have to solo it. I did it just for the sake of, you know, visual aid. But yes, that makes life loads easier. So now that I've done that, I'm gonna go ahead and just smooth it out slightly. I'm going to get this head, let's see, so I'm lazy and I can't be bothered to mask everything else. I'm just going to merge the head meshes together. And the pivot cylinder as well. There we go. And I'm just going to move that. It doesn't really matter where I put this. I'm just going to move that back onto the tip of that neck there. Oh, wait, did that not merge? Hold on. Yeah, okay, that was weird. I think it may have been masked. Anyway, yep, chuck it here. Awesome. He's got a long neck now. Quick tip before I move on. If you remember correctly, the upper and lower jaws are made from the same mesh. I took a typical mesh and I split it in half, and because of that, they have the same polygroups. So now if I wanted to try and, because it's now, you know, merged into a single subtool, if I try to isolate it, you know, weird things are going to happen. All you have to do is go and auto-groups it. Auto-groups can be found in polygroups. And if you hit auto-groups at the very top, every single independent mesh within a subtool, it will just auto-group them all together. So now that I've done that, so again, just a little example, they've all got like these messed up different things. Auto-groups, and now we just have the three, the upper jaw, the lower jaw, and the pivot. And now I can isolate that, and I've got full control of it again. And I can also split it, which I will, because I like to keep these bits separate for a while at least. And the pivot as well. There we go. Now they're all separate again. Right, the neck. Yeah, that's because it's Z-spheres, it also has different polygroups. So go ahead and auto groups, just to make it nice and clean and easy to work with. Right, let's get my concept art up again. It's got a rather chunky neck. It's got a very chunky neck. Ooh. So what I'll do then is, I'm doing all this now because some of the arm musculature, especially at the shoulders and the pectorals, really wrap heavily around the neck of the creature. So if it was still like in its Z-sphere state, that would have been a nightmare to kind of, you know, have the muscles work together like that. So I just want to make sure that the neck is now where it needs to be, how it needs to be, and also just helps with the overall silhouette, the overall shape. You know, getting things to look the way I want it to look before I get too deep into anything. We're still in a sketching phase, after all. And let's also, he's got some very spiky jaws. This guy's gonna be awesome. I will not be the one to detail this. Somebody else will be detailing this. I'm just making a block out. So you won't see me doing scales, but I'm very excited for whoever does. I think it might be Tristan, I'm not sure yet, but I'm really excited to see who does this. There we go. Make that a bit more bold. And yeah, bring that inwards like that. We'll make this, because it's got a very chunky, actually, oh no, I'm wrong. It's a really flat dewlap, I think it's called. Yeah. Let's go ahead then and just flatten it all like that. Which means probably all of this is going to be a bit more on the flatter side of things, like that. There we go. And thus, excuse me. Actually, I quite like the way that flows. There we go. It's a little gently kind of disperses into a curve. for the rest of it. But it is very exaggerative shapes, so we're going to make this a bit bigger like that. And actually, because the very extreme shapes of this guy slightly throwing me off, let's just open the mouth, like especially at the head, like this gap really bothers me. Stupid Spinosaurus. I'm gonna mimic exactly what I see in the artwork, just so I can guarantee that things are flowing the way I want it to. So now that I've done that, let's bring all of this downwards like this. There we go. And now I can see that actually all of this is meant to be like really baggy. Even though it's flat, it does still have like a bit of a thick, you know, really thick muscles all up here. Also make sure, you know, don't neglect different dimensions. Always turn the camera around and just inspect everything constantly. See, now that's looking more like a unit. Oh, that one difference to the neck and it's really coming together already. Like I said earlier, exactly like I said earlier, in regards to, like, you know, when you're drawing a human portrait and you forget the eyebrows, it makes everything look weird. You never know, like, the most random things, like the neck, can look so strange for so long. And once you address it without even realizing it, everything starts to flow into place. There we go. So now that I've done that, let me look at the tail again. So the tail does have like a lot of crazy spikes, which I won't be doing those just yet, but I think the tail can still also afford to just be wired altogether. Because again, it is such a huge guy, I want this guy to feel quite weighted. There we go. Very, very blocky from the front, isn't he? I don't think that's quite what we're after. Just actually, it kind of is. Another thing to bear in mind is sometimes the T-pose is just going to look weird. That's natural, that's normal. So of course, you know, creatures, you're never going to see a creature from the front. I've also got perspective turned off. So the feet are like as close to the camera as the hands. So even though technically far away, because perspective is turned off, it's orthographics, the feet are going to look unusually larger. If I enable perspective, they're going to look smaller, a bit more distanced away, you can't see the thighs anymore. You know, all these things are important to take into account. It's good to switch in and out as needed. There we go. That's also another thing that's handy is transparency. Just, you know, one button. Again, it's like on your default UI, I think to the right hand side. I think most of these buttons are on the right hand side actually. Enable that just so I can then give it a bit more of a pelvic, pubic, whatever it's called, area. There we go. Just trying to like make everything flow a bit more nicely. Okay, he's looking scary. God, he looks huge all of a sudden. My goodness. Tail's a little bit crooked. There we go. Let's just clean up the tail a little bit. I think it's all of this bit down here. And just kind of compensate for that via here. There we go. One thing that's very important that I do see some people kind of overlook is try and make sure that your shapes are smooth. It can be easy to overlook, but here, for example, if you look really carefully, there's a bit of a crookedness to this, the tail here, and like a little bit of an S-bend here, and it just doesn't look very good. So what I'll do is, again, just isolate all of this, and just kind of bump it up a little bit. One thing that you'll see me do a lot, just in general whenever I work, is I'm always like just giving like things little tiny bumps, little tiny twitches here and there. Because I'm trying to make sure that everything is nice and smooth, nice and streamlined, it flows nicely, because when, you know, if it has like these weird little bumps and such here and there, it does look odd. Right, I'm liking this. Because I've done all of that, I feel like the spine can now afford to be a bit closer forward. I now realise it should be more like here. This spine is going to be huge. God, this guy's going to be scary. Right, I think I'm still not 100% sold on the legs. I'm going to neglect them for now. Right, that arm musculature. Whew. So, I found this really cool reference, musculature reconstruction by Jonathan Harris. And this is awesome. I also have done a curious reconstruction by Vitamin Imagination. Now, obviously I know that Dinosaurus isn't a Spinosaurid. I'm looking more for the technique of the muscles here, while looking at the positioning of the muscles here. So I'll be referring back and forth to both different types. This isn't going to be insanely perfect on my end, because this isn't something I'm exactly an expert with. But I'll be trying my best. So I just need to move the arms a little bit more forward. Yeah, there we go. Actually, a little bit more like that. Right. This is always the intimidating part. There's multiple ways to do this. Actually, first things first. I think it's time to finally merge all of these bits together. So let's grab the neck. Yeah, okay, everything's in one place. And for this stage, I'm actually gonna go ahead then and dynamesh it all together. There we go. And this is a good example quickly, by the way. So I might erase these. I don't really want these definitions. Oh, actually, I kind of like them. The whole point I've mentioned before in regards to, you know, all these separate individual meshes. So when you do merge them together, they do create these gentle, subtle curves for you, these creases. And that could be like, especially here. You know, I've got some like natural pectorals, natural neck, the way that they sit together. That's what's really nice about doing all these individual meshes, is that you've got such good control. It's really easy to manipulate and change, and then when you merge them, they just finish half the work for you immediately. But also, I've merged it now because for the muscles, let's do something really cool ZBrush related. Okay, so I don't know how to start this. This is one of those cases where I do just find this kind of stuff intimidating, and the only way to really get over it is to get over it and just to jump in. So it won't look good for a while, but I'm just gonna have to keep on trying, keep on iterating, keep on, you know, turning the camera and just try my best. So I've got one big muscle around here, and I'm just gonna chuck that here, which stretches across the shoulder. In fact, actually, this bit might be better time-lapsed. So I might not talk over this bit until I need to, but I think, yeah, this will be a tedious process, so we'll go ahead and time-lapse it. Okie dokie, so this is where I'm at in the musculature so far. Sorry to have not really spoken or explained the process. This is still one of those things I need to focus on because I'm still not really used to going this deep into realism. It's probably not the most realistically accurate representation of, you know, spino musculature, but at least my logic, well, I've tried, but also the way I see it is that a lot of this is going to get merged and hidden away anyway. So it will still leave an imprint, but it won't be so incredibly visible. And I'm hoping for that reason, you know, a couple of little inaccuracies may either be hidden away or just removed entirely. But happy with this. I am actually very happy with this so far though. So you probably saw me several times, like these bits here. I kind of like just extruded the mesh out, and by doing that, ZBrush thing is that if you mask an area off, in fact, they do have like kind of chunky tails, don't they? So let's just quickly look up, yeah, let's do it here. And just mask off all of that, because that typically tends to be like a rather large dominant muscle. And let's just clean that mask up a little bit there, a little bit there. Okay. This is by going into the subtool palette and going all the way down to extract. You can change like how much it extracts for under the thick tabs, is on 0.02 to default, and hit accept. And I dynamesh it, and I smooth the crud out of it, and move it a bit more inwards. So this is something I did quite a fair bit. Oh, this is actually really, you know, isn't doing what I wanted to do, so I'll go ahead and just remove its symmetry so that I can pull it all the way in, like that. And then activate mirror and weld, there we go. And let's also just get backface mask is enabled on my standard brush, and we'll just add a bit of weight to it. Excuse me. Right then, and well, it's a little bit dodgy towards the end there, so I can just go ahead and pull this outwards like so. Again, deactivate symmetry and just like kind of bring it all in. I'm just gonna have that taper off entirely like that, and then mirror and weld, job done. Can't just delete that bit there. And yes, that's how I've been doing that a bit at least. This is a little bit rough around the edges, but I'll clean it up in a moment. There's also some other parts. So this bit here, you saw me like manually draw out, sculpted it under all these other like overlapping bits of muscle. And same goes for the neck. There are some very dominant neck muscles, and I could keep on masking and extracting those individual tendons or muscles like I did with this one here, or because I've already got like the big dominant ones, what I can instead do is just kind of draw into it. And, you know, they don't all have to be these big individual ones. I think some of them I can afford to like sculpting like this. What I'm going to do is increase lazy smooth like that, which I think is under stroke. Yeah, stroke, lazy mouse. This is basically a stabilizer. So if you've got shaky hands, there you go, that lets you stabilize your brush strokes. And then from that, I'll use a clay polish. And again, lazy smooth for the stabilizer, and just add a bit of weight, you know, gentle strokes in between them. There we go. And I'll just smooth it out a little bit like that. Oh, a bit too much actually, hold on. There we go, and just let's redo that line there. There we go. And we don't want that all the way through there, so I'm gonna go ahead and just remove that lazy smooth. And just cut that off. Actually, no, let's go ahead and just, there you go, move the entire thing underneath it. And, oh, whoops, again, remove lazy smooth, because otherwise you can't do quick brush strokes. And just cut that bit off there. That way it looks like they're like really sitting underneath each other. And I could do the same thing again for these muscles down here. Don't really have to go too deep into this because a lot of these you probably won't actually see. They'll be like hidden beneath the skin and fat and everything. But I'll just like a couple of little ones, just like really, you know, put it there. Right, there's probably so many more other muscles everywhere else I could do, but once again, I really feel like that a lot of them you're probably not going to see. You might see, actually, just this big one here. There you go, that big curve. Just like that. that one might be visible. And I'll tidy up the, you know, this weird leg, no, tail muscle there. Speaking of the leg, so the leg, the thigh muscles, like I said earlier, I feel like the arm muscles can really benefit from a lot of close study, but the leg muscles, at least for me personally, I find that you can get away with just the thigh and the calf. You could go as hard into it as I did with the arm muscles, but once again, a lot of this stuff does get hidden away as you go through everything else. For the legs, oh, am I ready to finally merge the mesh? I'm gonna save a backup. Hey, that's the thing, by the way, this is like digital modeling, so you always save backups. There's literally no reason not to. So I'm gonna save this as number 2, in case I don't like what I'm about to do and I can just revert back to the previous one. Never ever be afraid to go back and forth, make backups and go and revert back to them and blah blah blah. This is one of the reasons why I'm so happy to experiment, is because I can always just go back again. Oh, actually, you know what? So, all this entire time I've made about these primitive shapes, if we go ahead and render quickly, all of these different primitive shapes, we're about to see now why I swear by this, because if I go ahead and dynamesh, like I finally dynamesh everything together and smooth it out, look at all that natural musculature. And some of these would be so difficult, so tedious to manually sculpt. It's possible. Some people do a very, very good job of it, but personally, I really prefer this method. The curvature's already there. Now I just have to like define it just a little bit further. And it's so useful and it saves so much time. Ooh, whoops. There we go. Go ahead and just define that a little bit more. Yeah, leg muscles are very complicated. There's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on there, but I don't really feel the need to go that hard on this, especially because it's going to be a big bulky boy. Well, actually, if it's going to be a big bulky boy, it should have big muscles. Hold on, let's not give me reasons to go to, you know, add them now. Right, but actually saying that, so a common thing I've seen in like a lot of illustrations of paleo art is that there is often like this big web of skin that kind of goes down like this and over the leg. So that's a thing to keep in mind. Let's consult my reference art again. It doesn't really have any defined skin there. Neither does the JP Spino, of which this is anatomically based on in terms of the stance and animations. So I don't think I really need to do that, but what I can do is just, you know, define this bit here just a little bit more. There we go. And using clay polish, just give this bit here, just, oh, whoops, just a bit of a gentle, there you go, a little gentle fold down there. Nothing, excuse me, too crazy. Got a frog in my throat. Forgive me. And so I could just do it like this. But this is only meant to be a blockout. Somebody else is detailing this, so I suppose I don't have to go too hard into it either. But I did, again, mention earlier regarding like, the leg muscles. I still think that this should have a bit of something. So let me just, again, consult my references. And I want something... Here we go, the Dino Curious one, oddly enough. This is the kind of one I want. So I think for this one, I can just get away with carving the muscles in. So something a bit like this. And there'll be another one up here. And then, oh, whoops, hold on. I turn my camera like this just because it's nicer for me. I like drawing in certain angles. You don't really need to do that. Another one up there, and there. And there is this very important split that occurs down there. And that's where this is like going between that muscle down there. So we'll just go ahead and mimic that back there as well. You can't see all these muscles, so I'm not going to bother going too hard on those. There we go. I'm sure there's a lot more, like in terms of realism, there's a lot more I can do with the whole pubic area. Like there's technically like a whole bunch of stuff going on there, but I won't lie, I'm prude. So that's why I don't really give that area too much attention. I don't think it's necessary in ARK. I just figured I'd quickly address that for anyone wondering why it's so naked there. Right. Otherwise... Oh, one other thing. is the very important membrane. Oh, let's not use a square. Let's use a circle. No, that's a square again, a cube. Let's use a sphere. Very important thing is the membrane between the leg and the torso. Just gonna gently curve that inwards like that. Maybe make it a bit wider actually, there we go. And let's again consult the concept art. Doesn't really have it very clearly defined, but every creature has it. So I'll just stick it to be about, I think here is safe. Actually, I'm wrong. It's more like down here, I'd say. Technically, it does overwrite all of those cool muscles there, but this is something like, this is more like a bit of flab of skin, so this would like kind of occur over the muscles here, so it's kind of okay. I just have to be careful when I merge this. I don't want to merge it into these highly defined muscles. I have to like blur them a bit first, and then it'll all make a bit more sense. Otherwise, hold on, I think that's about it. Ooh, I'm liking that. I am really liking that. Remember what I said earlier? That if you worry it looks too goofy, stick by it. Yeah, this is why I wasn't worried earlier. Because this is now looking really cool, if I do say so myself. Now, I will say that in terms of merging the leg, I probably did that slightly too prematurely because I'm now realizing that for a T-pose, the legs could do with being just a little bit less, you know, so bent. I think the arms could also do being moved actually, so let's go ahead then and we'll do the arms quickly first. Now thankfully, there you go, all I have to do is isolate that one bit, and all I need to do is go back and we're going to pivot to around the elbow, is that what makes sense, and just move it just a little bit, hold on, let's angle it a little bit better. Say that's about more like it. We'll just slightly angle it a little bit outwards like that, a little bit. There you go. Bit of a jazz hands. And that will be a lot better for the animators. There you go. As a result of that, I will need to just adjust some of the musculature a little bit because now some of it's kind of not really sitting where it's supposed to sit. That was my mistake. I probably should have posed it before doing the muscles, but you know, there's solutions. I think that's quite okay. And then for the leg, for the leggy leg, hold on. Let's combine those two together and just Dynamesh. Actually, it's not Dynamesh just yet. No, but what I will do is auto groups and mirror and weld. There you go, that way it's synced. And let's also just combine the feet onto that. No, actually, let's not do that. That was a mistake. Okay, so I've got the leg mesh and I'm keeping the feet separated for good reason. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, oh, hold on, very gently mask all of this off and pivot around the knee. And all I want to do is very slightly just open it up a little bit. There we go. And again, very slightly, just pivot be around, well, anatomically it makes sense around here, but I'm going to do it here. There you go. And I just move a little bit downwards like that. So now the feet are still separated. I can guarantee that they are nice and flat on the floor, and I can just sit them back to where they're supposed to be. There we go. And this will just help it be a bit more appropriate for rigging. And everything looks like it's sitting where it's supposed to be. Alright then, good stuff. I've just spent a quick moment just organising all of my subtools, so now things are kind of categorised in a way that makes more sense. So this is all the muscles, this is a spine, head, pivot and lower jaw, leg, and I guess I can combine those two actually. Actually, I will not combine the membrane yet. Yeah, just everything that's the arm and pectoral muscles. And yes, I've also just added in the little mouth bits here, whatever they're called. Right, so as you probably noticed, I've kind of been leaving the head till last. I'm not really sure why exactly I have this habit. I guess probably because, you know, if I work on the head, I'll get really carried away. And if the body is, you know, left till after I've spent ages on the head, it might look a bit like an afterthought, and I don't really want that. So I tend to do the body first, because I think that's why. It's a habit I've made a long time ago. But there's nothing wrong with doing the head first or the body first or whatever. Lots of people do the head first because it's more interesting. You know, it's a cool thing that you look at the most, isn't it? But yeah, I don't know why I leave it till last. Right, I guess I also just find it kind of intimidating because it's a bit that you look at the most. So I need to do the teeth. Now, Spinosaurs, their teeth suck. They've got really annoying teeth to do. And this guy has lots of thin needle-like teeth. So I've gotten a sphere, and I've just pinched it a whole bunch of times to create this needle look, but it's a bit too thin, so I'm going to go ahead and inflate it just a little bit. And I want to thin it out, like so. And I want to, with backface mask enabled and a GIO brush, this is a custom brush by the way, I just want to kind of add like a bit of a gentle edge to the teeth. There you go. And I suppose technically Spino teeth are more conical, aren't they? Where they're like little cylinders, but, or cones, but I don't know, I think this just kind of looks a bit nicer. Let's see. Make it a little bit more razor sharp. There we go. Alright. This is always a bit of a tricky, tedious bit. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put it, I'm going to duplicate it, put it into backups and hide it forever, and get back to this one again. And yeah, Spinosaurus teeth are weird. Like they're just kind of shaped all over the place, aren't they? I guess they're also kind of like crocodile teeth, so they probably sit like outside the mouth. So if that's going to be the case, there'd be more on the actual jaw itself, I feel like. And I'm going to let it clip for now. It can clip through all it wants because I can tidy all that up later. And this is another bit that's just going to be quite a tedious process. I'm really referring to the concept art for this. It won't be like precisely perfect down to every number and length of tooth, but I'm going to try and get the vibe as well as I can. And yeah, no, to be honest, this is one of those things that can just take a while. Now, if these were lots of small repetitive teeth, just like, say, sauropods, then I do have a couple of tricks I could use to just quickly jot out a ton of teeth in like one fell swoop and then just adjust the positions afterwards. But unfortunately, this guy is not like that. He's got big, crazy, annoying teeth. So I'm gonna have to do every single one manually. And it is the way it is. Also have to make sure that they actually sit nicely towards the middle as well. From what I can tell with this guy, his teeth actually kind of point inwards towards the end. There we go. So I have to make sure they all really sit nicely. I'm doing a top jaw first. One, because it's again a weird habit that I've invented at some point, but also two, some logic to it, is that I can then adjust the bottom jaw to sit correctly amongst these teeth, so there's no clipping. Let's see. And I want to have one more about here, and it's really important that you make sure that they sit properly when symmetrized. I'm going to go ahead and just unmask everything and mirror and weld. It did that, so I will flip it and then mirror and weld. And there's just a bit too much of a gap there. I don't like it when it's got a bit of a gap there, so I'll just go ahead and undo a couple of times so it's masked again. Move it to the left, mirror, mirror and weld, and that's a bit more like it. Cool. And I'm just undoing all of it again because I still want it to be on the one side, but at least now that particular tooth is where I would like it to be. Right, and we're just going to keep on placing more teeth. Woo! Okay, so that's the teeth pretty much done, and I'll just close the mouth entirely, just take a moment to kind of shift things around and make it all kind of hug nicely, but specifically make sure nothing clips, since this needs to be able to like open and close its mouth a lot. There we go. The teeth are quite jagged looking because I think it just kind of fits the character of this creature nicely. Makes it look a bit more monstrous. Gonna adjust that a little bit like that. Bring it all back in a little bit more. This is quite narrow, but then it does taper upwards like this. And that bit there's quite flat. Alright then, cool, 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 cool. So now what I want to do is just slightly open the mouth and do the bottom set of teeth. So I'll get my backup mesh here, drag it back out, And now we're going to manually place every single tooth again. Okay, go ahead and mirror and weld, and there we go. We have our full set of teeth. So, a bit of a crazy thing about this creature actually though is that, so I'm glad I've done the teeth now, because as it turns out, or actually first things first, if I just go ahead and merge the bottom teeth to the jaw, check the polygroups. Oh, no. Yeah, cool, so it's 2 individual polygroups. I want to keep the teeth as one group because then I can just easily select all of them. Yeah, as I was gonna say, this guy has a split jaw. That's gonna make things a little bit tougher. But we can take a look, ooh, and just see how that looks like a fully opened mouth. That's quite terrifying. Ooh, I like that. And ideally, for a T-pose, his mouth should be very open. Ooh, that's creepy. But it does indeed have a split jaw. So what I should probably do now is, I've disabled symmetry. I'm going to go ahead and mask, oh, actually it's divide first to try and get like a cleaner cut like this. I'm going to go ahead and just split mask. We'll have, oh, if you ever can't split the mask, it's probably because you've got subdivisions. So delete your lower subdivision or higher, whatever, and then it'll allow you to mask. Gonna go ahead and separate, there you go, the teeth. Sweet. And right, so here's the interesting trick. I'm gonna go ahead, so if I now just split the mouth or the jaw in half, I'm gonna actually merge it again. Because it's technically still 2 different meshes, I've not actually merged them yet, or mirror and welded or dynameshed. So if we go into this, you can see there's still, it looks like one mesh, but it's not officially been merged. If I auto groups, you can now see it's actually 2 different things. And what's handy from this is that what I can then do is, if I just go ahead and then move it to the pivot over there, so I can move it up and down like before. I can also move it left and right, but obviously, you know, that's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and just separate them for a moment, and I'm going to enable groups. So if you go into geometry, Dynamesh groups there, so I've enabled groups, so polygroups and Dynamesh, they're actually 2 separate things entirely now. And now I can move them apart like that. And if I had the teeth attached to them, it'd be even better. So because the teeth have this touching bit right here, because of that, when I merge them in with the jaws, it causes it all to like kind of glue, which we don't want. So I think what I will do is chop off half of it. There we go. And I'm actually going to go ahead then and just do this and just remove a bit of that. So now when I mirror and weld, there's a gap in between, which, oh, it's slightly lopsided. Oh, that's strange. That's a jaw that's off. If I just mirror and weld, oh, it's got a weird gap in the middle. Okay, things are going a bit weird. But if I were to, hold on, auto groups, and can I just mask that entire bit off and chop it off entirely? Yeah, okay, cool. So what happened there was that things were just, due to it being like all automated procedures, it just did something weird. But what I can do now is I can take all of this, mask, oh, hold on. Show polygroups? It has no polygroups, interesting. Let's go ahead then and just quickly polygroups, group visible. I'm going to mask off 1/2 and group mask. So now they're technically 2 separate entities again. And in theory, if I now combine it to the jaws, get my pivot back in place, it should now separate. Oh, symmetry on. There we go. That's exactly what we want. So the teeth are separate, the jaws are separate, nothing's gluing weirdly, And now we have full control. Awesome. Now, obviously, it's got a big defined gap, which isn't very appealing. That's something that can be addressed in retop or in a high poly. There's a lot of ways to address this bit. In fact, technically, it's supposed to have a stretched webbing in the middle, so I think that is something best left to retop, because in ZBrush, if I mess with it now, or actually no, I'm wrong, I'm horribly wrong, because it's supposed to have an open jaw like this, so I can now just do the webbing in between, and that can then get retopped and rigged animated, and it'll be perfectly fine. Oh, that is intimidating. So I think that's about how open I'll have the mouth, so I'll go ahead and just stretch this little bit like that. I'm going to adjust the neck, excuse me. Oh wait, oh no, how does a neck work? Huh. That's interesting, because according to the illustration, the neck is attached to around here. Oh, well, this is where my job as the 3D artist comes in. It's my job to translate and figure out the 2D concept. Now, don't get me wrong, Risky did a fantastic job on the artworks. Excellent references, 100%. But this is something that happens sometimes where, you know, the translation or the conversion between 2D to 3D doesn't quite add up. I see it all the time, and, you know, in my opinion, it is the 3D artist's job to figure it out. Although, the more the 2D artist can do, the better. But sometimes, you know, it's just a thing that happens. Right, I think, judging by all the concept art and such, we should probably have it webbed about as far as here. Because again, it can always be like heavily adjusted later in the retop and such, or in a high poly, but I think, ooh, whoops. Go ahead and just mask that off. And we'll just bring it all the way back there, and we'll just tidy it up like this. And so about here is where, so that's actually kind of convenient. Where the neck kind of protrudes through is actually a pretty good place to have the throat. There you go. So that could be where the throat is, so I can then adjust the jaws. That does work out quite nicely, doesn't it? Probably do a little bit more up there as well. And I think it's safe that I can... hold on. I think it's safe that I can remove some of this. So what I'm going to do something a bit different here, just because since these are now two individual polygroups, I don't want to mirror and weld this, because if I do, it'll merge the polygroups. And if I Dynamesh with groups enabled, well, it's the same group, it doesn't count, and it will just cause me havoc. But what I can do is enable Sculptress mode. And if I do that and hold smooth, you can watch it delete away the, the polygons. That's disabled, backface mask, and because there's also Sculptress mode enabled, so I'm going to go ahead and just really carve it out. And that allows me to do some pretty funky things in really confined areas. So what I want to do next is I actually want to go ahead and try sculpting on the jaw and make some changes, but if I do that, I risk affecting the teeth. Now, normally I'll just mask it off, but because these are individual polygroups, even though it's symmetrical, the polygroups are asymmetrical, and I cannot mask both of them at the same time, because I do not want to mirror and weld this, otherwise it'll mirror and weld the polygroups as well. Now, the way I can fix this, or, you know, be able to make changes on both the jaws at the same time, but not the teeth, is gonna enable painting, which is again just, you know, here, P for paint. Gonna mask off one side, gonna color it anything, like red. I'm gonna do the same again to the other side, color it in red, and invert back to white, so everything else is that. And by now painting these both as red, even though they are technically still different polygroups, but they're symmetrically the same color, if I go down to Polypaint on the right hand side, go to Adjust Colors, and I'm going to click on this little grey and drag it over to the red to pinpoint that color to pick it up. Gonna hit mask. And now it's just masked off the red bit, or I had the red bit selected and everything else has been masked off. If I now hide colorize, you can see it's just masked all the teeth off for me. Bit of a workaround if for whatever reason you need to mask off very specific things, but you just can't for one reason or another. Just add a bit of mass everywhere. I think for the entire lower jaw or the whole jaw thing, I will go back and forth a lot with DragonHeart after this and just really feedback the crap out of it, because this is something that's, you know, very unique and specific. But I can at least show you a couple of tricks now before I like really polish it and finish it later. There we go. And ideally, I would probably, in fact I will, just kind of stretch that over and make it all look really good when it's actually merged properly together. Though be careful, because that does of course bleed, or it didn't bleed through actually. It could have bled through the membrane. I think that's okay for now, but like I said, we'll discuss this bit a lot later. It does still need his tongue. The tongue is thankfully a very simple sphere, which then I'll use the move tool to move a point out, and then I will pinch it to create, there you go, some weird thing like that. And it doesn't really have much of a tongue from what it's a very typical tongue. So just go ahead and crease a big line down the middle of it. Make it nice and thin and just slightly bend it like that, I'd say. And let's get down standard on a very low Z intensity of back face mask enabled, and just give it like a bit of a slight edge like that. And with all of that, make it a bit bigger actually, there you go. And I'll just stick that to be about here. If I go from the front, it does have a bit of a weird shape. We don't like weird shapes. Not like this anyway. There you go. You were saying earlier about things being blobby or too like angular, too warpy in some places. Don't like it. We'll get the inflate one, the inflate tool, set that to a low Z intensity and just gently inflate a couple bits here, just to like really pronounce some of the curvatures and the dip in the middle, especially here as well. Right, and pinch it all again, just one more time. Make that a nice sharp end. Now I'm being really nitpicky over a tongue of all things. Is kind of weird. Hold on, there we go. Okay, cool. There's a couple of different ways to approach how this sits in the throat. That's again, I think, just another thing I'll communicate to DragonHeart, because it's going to be quite specific. But some creatures, like some lizards for example, have, or even birds kind of have like this gross hood around the tongue where it protects it like against, you know, the throat, and it's all a bit strange. But I think that works there for now. Oh god, the eyes. How am I going to do the eyes on this? See, the eyes are easy enough, right? It's more so that Spinosaurid skulls, for me anyway, I just have a bit of a hard time kind of working with them. It's such like an uncanny shape. Go ahead and just save a copy of this again. And this has got really, really tiny eyes, so I think we'll put them about here, I'd say. There you go. Maybe just a little bit lower down. And I will need to just carve out, there you go, this. And it does have big eyebrows, doesn't it? Yeah, it's got those very classical large eyebrows. Let's get the other reference. There you go, the line art. Okay, so he's got really tiny eyes. Oh my goodness. That makes sense. Large creatures do have smaller eyes, proportionate to the rest of their body. But this guy's got like almost invisible eyes. Let's go ahead then and just down standard, a bit of a carving into there. Mirror and weld the eyes. There we go. You look so silly all of a sudden. Okay, so this This guy's face is wild. Okay, so I did have to go away for a bit, so this is a new session now, and you may have noticed in between that I did do quite a bit of work on the face, since this is another one of those areas where I just wanted to buckle down and focus. All of these crests actually took me a number of attempts, so it was all like the same process again and again, and what that process was that essentially I duplicated the entire upper skull mesh, so under subtools duplicate, made it just ever so slightly smaller. So this is the actual upper skull that we see, or upper jaw, and this is the bit beneath it, which is on a higher resolution. And essentially what I'd done is I masked bits off, inverted the mask and pulled them out and just kind of, you know, manipulated it and made new shapes and such. So, like I said, I did attempt all this a couple of times, same method every time. It really was one of those just buckle down and focus moments. And these spikes, so these spikes I'll be able to demonstrate again on these spines here, so I won't go into too much about that. But otherwise, that's our face of our Spino so far. Hapipalus is meant to have like a whole bunch of crazy spikes and scoots and everything, but I think that is something best left to the next artist who works on this. In fact, I've probably already done too much, but I'm sure for the sake of demonstration, they probably won't mind, and if they do, they can just remove anything anyway. So, the next thing to work on, or I'd like to work on, would be the tail. And the tail has, it's interesting, it's like, it has the same kind of spikes as these do, these of which will also have like a bit of webbing in between as well. But this will not have any webbing, and it kind of looks like that the tail has, you know, it's not so much covered in spikes, more so that it's, oh, I really don't know how to describe it actually. I don't know, it's kind of splintered. It's the best word for it. It looks like the tail is splintered. So let's give this a go then. What I want to do is, so that's about where that ends. So the first splinter, if we will, would be like all the way back here, I'd say. So let's go ahead then, and they're going to be quite dramatic shapes. These are all going to be quite thin, although saying that, I do need to just gently increase the base of that a little bit more. There we go. And make this quite a bit narrower. And otherwise, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One of them being down here, and this, of course, this large one being 7. And there isn't really a whole lot to say regarding this process. You can see that every single spike I make, I'm constantly deforming and I'm making every single one different, which is the same process for the spikes along, you know, the entirety of the face, for all the teeth. Every single one was just slightly individually changed, adjusted, edited, that way that everything has its own unique look. Yeah, it does take quite a bit longer, but it really pays off. Okay, so that should be about all of our spikes needed. Now, I definitely don't have them perfect in regards to the concept art because these are extremely abstract. So I'm definitely going to have to like kind of fiddle about with this myself. What I do want to quickly do is just, oh, hold on. Let's quickly just mask that off, followed by all of the upper ones. That way I can now manipulate all the ones below, because these are a bit too long. In fact, these all, as a whole, should just be smaller. More like this. Okay, so like I said, these kind of are meant to more look like it's splintering off from the rest of the tail. This probably isn't something I'll be able to do, you know, really quite perfect. This might be like another one of those, you know, for the next artist to work on. So essentially it looks like that the spine is doing a lot of this. Now, I'm personally not really a big fan of that. I think, it looks more like that this looks like it's being, you know, reducted from and caved away. I mean, it really is. So, you know, when we like follow the whole trail of the tail, you can see that it breaks off entirely. What I think this should be is that it should specifically extend from the tail so that at the end of the day, this whole line here remains. Speaking of which, before we do anything to the tail, I really should merge this in first because I'm going to be making some very large changes to the tail, and these kind of things will, like any growths, will occur above this muscle. So let's go ahead then and just do that first. Let's split that bit of muscle off. Let's go and divide it. It's quite pixelated. There we go. And let us merge down. Then give the whole thing a bit of a smooth. I just want to be a bit gentle here because I don't want to smooth the edges of the tail and risk like making anything shorter than it should be. So let's go ahead then and just outline all of this. Tap it a couple of times. So now when I do this, the overall shape isn't being affected. There we go. Cool, that got the job done quite nicely. Now then, it's going to be the best way to do this. As always, the best way to do anything is to save a backup. Right, I'm thinking I'm just going to be a bit ballsy, and I'm going to go ahead and just merge everything immediately. So this is obviously, you know, quite, as I said, quite ballsy. If anything, I think I might do it at a slightly higher resolution, so 350. Now, this will mean that everything else I merge in the future will also have to be at a higher resolution, because if I ever go any lower, I'll lose detail here. But I'm confident it'll work out. If not, then perhaps, you know, do everything else first. But what I want to do is, using clay build-up and backface mask enabled, I'm just going to try and build it all like this. And I'm going to be very rough because, again, you know, this is only the Blockout. I'll be very rough with this, but you can see immediately now it's starting to look like that they're really growing from it. And it's like just a very bigger part of the creature. They're not just, you know, these bits of bone poking out. Like, something warped is happening here. At least I hope so anyway. I hope that is the impression. And it's accidentally creating a bit of those curved U-shapes, which is an excellent bonus. I am making these a bit thicker than they originally are in the concept art, but honestly, I don't think it's really a problem. There we go. And you can see what I mean, how this is now overwriting the muscle underneath, which is what would happen because, well, at least I assume so. I will admit, I don't think a ton in regards to how anatomically things piece together, and that could be a flaw. That very well could be a flaw, because I know some other people, such as Clay, one of the ARK concept and 3D artists, whenever he does his models, he goes really hard on the anatomy, really hard on the science, and it grounds the creature so incredibly. Even the most like fantasy or like dragons he's done will look incredibly believable. And that's fantastic, like, wow. But I will say that I, as much as I respect it, I really follow the rule of cool a lot more, and some might consider that a bit of a cop-out, and then again, others prefer it. You know, everyone's got different tastes. That's a big thing, isn't it? Everyone's got different tastes. That's so, so important. And this is one of those moments where this is kind of my preference, and I have to assume, since I'm being commissioned for this, they probably are looking for my preference. You see what I'm saying? At least I hope so. So in this scenario, like, even if it is bone, like maybe these are meant to be like completely sturdy bone, or I don't know, osteoderms or something, maybe they wouldn't overwrite the muscle, but at the same time, doesn't that look pretty cool? Maybe not plausible, I'm not sure. A bit of a tangent entirely there, but I think it's worth bringing up. You know, not only am I explaining why am I doing it this way, but also that everyone's got different styles. And everyone's got different preferences. You know, not just the artist, but the consumer, you know, the viewers, the fans. You know, everyone's got like their different preferences. I'm definitely much more of a fantasy person. It's a wonder I'm making so many dinosaurs recently, because I much prefer fantasy. Not to say I'm not having fun, I freaking love these. I'm just surprised as to how I've been entrusted with the responsibilities, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, that came out really fast. I'm actually kind of surprised. I took my break after doing, you know, everything else the entire last session and did a bit of the head off camera. And I took my break thinking that the tail, after I did attempt the tail a couple of times in a previous session, just wasn't quite vibing with me. And it's funny how quickly I got it done there. Right. I'd say it's still not quite perfect, actually. So what I should do is just mask off some of the individuals, because they definitely are more... Oh, hold on. Let's mask that off, because that was not entirely right. They definitely are more warped like this. Same for this one here. So again, we should pull it out so that we can then curve it. I'd say this one here is another one that's could afford to be, there we go, just a bit longer and a bit more extreme. Okay, that's looking much more like it. And then I'd say the bottom ones are pretty good, actually. Okay, I like the bottom ones. I think the tall ones, or the top ones, just had to be exaggerated further. Right, the spines. These spines. We're getting close to that one technique I mentioned probably 2 hours ago now. Or in my case, a couple of days ago. That I was really excited to show. Right, so the spines. Let me think. What I might actually do is I'm going to go ahead and remove this first, just so that I can now focus on just a singular one without the distraction of the others in the way. And let's go ahead then and make a really long spike. Oh, whoops. There we go. Curve it up a little bit. And that should get the job done quite nicely. Make it a little bit larger. There we go. Okay, so I don't know what I was going to say there. Okay, yeah, so obviously I've got this big shape here. The entire point of the shape, just like how you might have seen me follow regarding all of these facial ones here, I have this big shape here as like a sort of template, a guide. This was always going to get deleted or maybe repurposed into the membranes. We'll see what I feel like. But it was always supposed to be a guide. And I'm going to use this guide to now just sort of guide me along the length of these. Now, let me just like zoom out for a second. Thinking about it, even my guide here might actually be a bit too small. So I think the length of this current spine here is actually about correct. So now I can just kind of consistently follow this shape, if you will, sort of like this. And do I want to be accurate to the numbers? I think I do. So this huge central one has got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, just 4 spines. So this is 1. This is 2. They're gonna start to bend. Actually, I'd say that one bends quite a bit far back. Hold on. Yeah, so 2. This one is 3, so I'm going to make this one smaller, but I'm going to inflate it to compensate, because even though it's smaller, we don't want to be like actually smaller, you know? It's a bit tricky to describe. I want them to have the same consistent width, and just simply making the whole thing smaller will make it look really fragile, I guess is kind of the word. Like, just it will just look weirdly different if I don't have it have the same width. So it's a bit tricky to describe. I know as far as you're concerned, I've been talking non-stop for 2 hours now, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm just starting a new session, so I'm having to like relearn to talk all over again. But hopefully you can see what I'm trying to accomplish. Let's see. This one's going to be quite close to these ones down here, so all of these neck ones. And speaking of which, now I've got these two all placed together, let's go ahead and just bend this one, because this one does have a bit of a very subtle S shape like this. And now I can afford to move all these a bit closer to bridge the gap. There we go. Actually, let's not do that, because what I might have to do is just like the tail ones, I might have to merge it myself. And if I'm going to merge these spines into the rest of the body, just like the tail, then, or maybe, I don't think I will do that. Normally I would, but come to think of it, just for the sake of like animation or like any particular direction that DragonHeart and the next artist want to go, I will just keep these spines separate in case it's like a certain technique they want to do. If they want it to be merged, they can always mimic this technique over here. So I'll give them the option to decide, because if I decide to do it for them, then it might lock them into a decision. And that's not really a thing I like doing to my clients. Bless. Or to other artists in the pipeline, I'd rather give them the easiest time they possibly can. Because I know firsthand, it can be very tricky sometimes working from someone else's model. And I definitely want to make their lives as easy as possible. Okay, so we've got the... I'm happy with these 4 here. Double check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, so I'm happy with this here. So starting from this big one here, this big central one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd say 5 is where it starts to get really small. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I probably don't have to make it, you know, accurate to the number, but I can afford to, so why not, you know? So I know that they are quite consistent and actually kind of straight. Hold on. Just a little bit straight. And consistent down to the 5th one. So 1, 2, 3. Like I said, if I'm going to make them smaller, I want to make them a bit thicker as well. 3, 4. And before I did number 5, so you can see that I'm having a bit of an issue where I can't, you know, they're starting to get obscured by the thickness of the spine, or the template membrane. So what I'm just going to do with that is going to reset my gizmo, going to slightly offset it by holding Alt, and I'm just going to go ahead and shrink it to be paper thin. Oh, whoops. There you go. So I'm going to get rid of this anyway and do like a new mesh, or a new membrane, so this just means that now I can see things entirely, but you can see how I'm following a certain curve, a certain pattern. And that was the entire point of that. So this will now be number 5. And it's from here. Yeah, it's from here. Then I certainly do get a bit more smaller and crazier. I do just want to do a quick little, just a little gentle bump of everything. There we go. So now we select that one again. And it was 11 in total, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. So for these ones, it's now, okay, so can I do the same shape still? I think it's more like another S. Sort of like the first ones. There it goes. It's sort of a bit more like this. So let me just have this for now. I know it's a bit of a separate, you know, it's a change of flow. I can adjust that. So now we've got 6, 7. 6, 7, yeah. Let's make it smaller. We're going to start ignoring the templates now. Oh, wait. Where is it? This one. 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes. 8. Got 8 here, just tap it a little bit to make it fat. 8, 9, oh, whoops, 9. I'm gonna start to, actually, it's still a consistent shape. Okay, we're gonna keep it as the subtle S. 9, 10. Make it a little bit fatter. 10, 11. Oh, wait, a little bit shorter. There we go. And that is one entire spine. It's got quite the silhouette, doesn't it? Look at that. That is so cool. Ooh. I think I got the right sizing overall. It feels very extreme. If anything, I might have the head ones a bit too large. Again, they can always change that, but I kind of like it personally. Oh, that is such a cool design altogether. And like I said, so ideally, I would mimic this same technique on the tail across the spines, but I'm going to keep the spines bare just in case they want to do anything like really specific. Because again, if I do this, it will just really lock it in. What I could at the very least do is, excuse me, I could at least inflate the bases a little bit. Now, you see like all of this, you know, floating bit, well I say floating, all these buried bits down here. Ideally, once I dynamesh, or someone dynameshes these spines into the rest of the body, this just gets eaten. It just gets absorbed into the rest of the mesh. There we go. So that wouldn't normally be quite the issue. Hey, even over here it kind of floats quite nicely. What I will do is just maybe make these a little, make that one there just a little bit thicker altogether. And then just move it slightly more towards it. Actually, I prefer it, yeah, I prefer it where it was previously. Okie dokie. What do I do? Do I do the membrane or do I do the next set? I think, let's do everything twice. I'll do the membrane first. So let's go ahead and save. Now, when it comes to doing membranes, so including wings, so if you're a big dragon fan like I am, and you want to do wing membranes, it is surprisingly challenging because there's a lot of methods about it and everything is tedious and messy. I'm going to show you what is my favourite one. So first of all, we've got quite a thin plane. We can't make it too thin because otherwise dynameshing it will make it do funny things. But it's thin enough, I think. Let's do like something like 300 dynamesh. So it's quite high resolution. Okay, so first of all, let's just chop off the things we don't need. So all of this and all of this. Gonna go ahead then and just split unmasked, and we're gonna delete, oh whoops, cancel, delete this. There we go, so that's what we're left with. Now, what I could do, if I just quickly save. Now, you might be thinking, oh okay, so just do that again then. So maybe you can just like kind of do all of this. And say I was to do that, so we're going to take off the masked bit and delete that, and then we dynamesh it. Well, now it does all this horrible stuff here, where it's just kind of reinvented some of the mesh back in. It's got these horrible splits on either side, these two planes, where it's just a nightmare to connect. And everything's just really horrible, it's really gross. It doesn't work. And believe me, I used to do this. I used to brute force that for a very, very long time. There's another another strategy that I don't really try much myself. We're going to try it for the first time here. So I'm going to use Trim Lasso and Control Shift left click. Now this one can be really good in some circumstances. So this is good for like trimming bits off, as you can see here. It's great for like big flat shapes, but every now and then, if you do like a sharp thing, you can see that it just doesn't quite do what you want it to do. So over here, this is great for hard surface, not really that good for organics. So this is another method that could work, but just kind of doesn't. And then another one that I used to do for a long time is simply doing this. And again, this is awful because what you're seeing is, yeah, all of that, again, the two different halves, the two different planes. And if you were to dynamesh it, nightmares. Let me show you the most absurdly easy solution. First thing I'm going to do is just mop up all of this. We don't want any of this, but instead of splitting it like I did to the bottom side, because this is mesh that we actually want to interact with, I'm going to invert it. I'm going to enable Sculptures mode, and on a very big amount, I'm going to shift, and as you can see, by shifting, So smoothing, but on sculptress mode, it is erasing, it's rapidly erasing everything. And as I get closer down, I want to make sure that I'm doing this like kind of smaller. Now you can go too far with this. If I do it really big, it will just eat through the mask. So this is incredibly destructive. You've got to be like very patient and precise with this. So start big, then go small as you get closer to the important information. But by doing that, you can see that the edges are actually, I mean, yeah, they're like a little bit pixelated due to it being sculptress mode, but they are solid. They're solid, they have width. So now, if I dynamesh it again, they still have width. So, now what I'm going to do then is, for my own benefit, so I know what I'm doing, I'm going to start masking out every individual thing. I don't really need to do this, but it just kind of helps keep things a bit more under control. And this guy's got some really wide, like, kind of, how would you describe this? It goes in far, that's what I'm trying to say. Let's go ahead then, just do all of this. We'll just leave that bit till later. Yep, all of these as well. Those bits too, these bits, or in fact that just goes basically all the way over here, so we're going to mask all that off. And then, or in fact all of this is just not wanted, and this bit here. Okay, so something like this. Now, because we want to keep the spikes, the little sharp bits, and we've already seen that if we're a bit too aggressive to sculptress, it will just eat through it all like this. I'm going to be like just very gentle about this, very patient, but there you go. You can see that the mask does try to do its job somewhat, but the main important thing here is that I can just make these really big, crazy things quickly, effectively, and sharply. You'll remember that from the trim lasso, whenever I tried doing like those big sharp, tried to remove sharp cavities, it was causing it to like underperform and was kind of curving it for me, and it was just, it didn't do what I wanted. This does what I want. This does what I want too much. There we go. This is crazy. And I'm quite proud to say, I mean, I'm sure this is not original, I'm sure other people thought about it, but I'm quite proud to say that I did kind of think of this method myself. I didn't see anyone else do this. Again, I'm sure it exists. I didn't invent it, but I figured it out. And I'm quite happy about that. Because I think this is the best way. And this is what I do for dragon wings. This is what I do for just anything that's like fin related. In terms of like, you know, membranes, skin. Okay, and again, as you can see, it all retains the same width. So if I now just go ahead and dynamesh, and we're just going to naturally smooth everything. There you go then. How great is that? Now, of course, there's a lot more to do. In fact, if anything, I'm going to undo that smoothing because that made it a bit too clean, a bit too sharp. So let's just undo all that just so I can polish things off a little bit more because, let's see, this is actually meant to go much further down. Let's see. In fact, yeah, all of these are really supposed to go like just further down in general. More like that. And what I can then do is just do a little bit of back face mask. We don't want to do it too much because it will create these much thinner. I didn't that time actually, but in general it tends to cause like really thin bits to occur. These are all meant to be like quite intense V shapes. These are meant to be pulled a bit more upwards like this. Okay, so after everything is now sort of adjusted to where I wanted to be, I'm going to go ahead and dynamesh again. Oh, whoops. Because a lot of changes had been made, a lot of deformities. Now it's just gone and reordered everything, as you can see there. And then I shall smooth it all again. Actually, before I do that, what is all that doing there? Here's actually a handy little thing. Let's go ahead and just, there we go, mask all of that off and delete all of that. There we go. Okay, just to make it a little bit cleaner. And this bit down here, just because I don't like the way that looks. Delete. Cool. Dynamesh it again, and now we go ahead and smooth it all. A couple little bits and pieces here that I can always nitpick on later, But for the most part, that is that spine now looking pretty darn clean. I feel like the bottom down here is actually, the bottom down here is a bit messy on the art as well. Like, not messy, sorry, irregular. Speaking of irregular, I just realised this isn't flowing right. I forgot to address this. Oh, hold on. Try that again. Mask all that off. There we go. Just to like try and encourage it. There you go, just to bridge the gap between the two. That singular change made a big difference in the way the spines flow. Okay. Wow, look at him. Go ahead and save this. And then we have another spine. Right, so this has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. More like 7. I'm gonna be a little bit lazy. I don't want to be lazy. So I was thinking what I could do is just isolate 7 of these and duplicate it and kind of bridge it over to the second row of spines, but actually the more I think about it, I don't think I actually want to, do I want to do that? No, because they're actually very differently shaped. Okay, let's go ahead then and just isolate one of these. And we'll just go ahead then and I'm going to duplicate that off, but I'm going to go ahead and split this off entirely. That way it's now just like its own individual entity. Cool. And for this one will obviously be a little bit harder because it is asymmetrical. It's about to become asymmetrical. So I think what I'll do for this is I am going to, first of all, make it smaller, make it thicker. Most of them are quite straight, it's just the big central one is really curved. So in that case, I'll keep them all straight for now. And again, this is why I got the templates here, because it's a template I've already confirmed is a nice flat shape. Which I will actually just go ahead and, can I make this, oh, it's gonna be a nightmare to make it thinner. Okay, gross solution I would not recommend. I want to make this thinner. Because we're gonna delete the mesh anyway, I'll just do trim dynamic with back face mask and just really, no, I can't do that. Just kind of tap it. It's going to invert some of it. That's really awful. Whatever. It's just made it thinner is the point, you know, compared to before. That's really messy. But like I said, that mesh is getting deleted soon anyway. This one is sitting around here. And the other big one is quite parallel to this big one-ish. So this is 7, mainly 7 spines with a couple of little small ones. Alright. Okay, I think I just finished the second row of spines. I was originally trying to commentate it, but the more I went on, the more I was just kind of struggling to really explain the process. So I had to just kind of buckle down and focus. Oh, one thing I've immediately noticed is that these ones are really not synced to the rest, but I also want to kind of bring all this a bit more inwards like that. That might be better to be done afterwards, actually, after I do the membranes. That's gonna, so currently this is all like a bit of a flat direction, just like the spine here, or the template. But otherwise, I think shape-wise, it is pretty fine. I'll just go ahead and, I won't make any big changes yet, actually. But we will go ahead and mirror and weld. No, won't do that either. No, okay. Everything I'd normally do, I should wait until after the membranes are complete. So I would go through the same process again, though this time it's going to be a little bit trickier because it is on a asymmetrical plane. And that just, you know, is the way it is. But for the most part, it should be quite fine. Let's go ahead then and put that to be about where I want it to be. Yeah, you can see about how it's rather straight. So now, let's just go ahead and mask. Oh, whoops. Oh, right. Yeah, I need to data mesh it first because it's very pixelated and low res right now. I've data meshed it. I'm going to mask off that entire side. I'm going to enable sculptress mode. Oh, whoops. So that I can now just eat away all of the excess. Sweet. And just to, because currently it's very chaotic, I'm just going to go ahead and dynamesh again with sculpture mode turned off, just smooth it a little, just to like kind of, you know, clean it up. And now we're going to try and remask all of these bits again. So same process as last time, and thanks to the fact that this is otherwise, you know, another flat surface, it means that this technique just works quite nicely. It's thin, it's flat, it works out. That doesn't even have a mesh down there, so we'll go ahead and just mask all that off. And neither do these ones, so we'll just remove all of that too. With this one, oh, hold on. They go like that and like that. And then all of this we are now to mask off again. So get rid of all of that. Get rid of all of that. And then we just eat away the rest. And you can see the mask really does try to hold itself. Obviously if I go too hard and just keep, you know, keep trying to eat it, the mask will give way, but you can see it really does try to stay there. Which is why I bother masking. You technically could do without it, but then you'd have to be like a lot more careful as to, you know, just exactly what you do. Whereas this allows me to be fast and reckless, get it done, and still retain the shape I want for the most part. I've just eaten away all of that, that's fine, because what I can do now is dynamesh it, give it a gentle smooth, and I can just go ahead and rebuild that bit I just deleted, and just move it upwards again like that, and maybe do like a bit of a, yeah, a bit of a twitch to the side like that. Excuse me. Go ahead and just, oh, you have to angle your camera a couple of times to make sure that this is going the direction you want it to, and also just, you know, make sure everything's nice and centered, because that always looks better. This one over here got a bit lopsided because, you know, it is just tricky working on what isn't a mirrored area. This one has no visible membrane. This one has a lot. Well, I say a lot, not really. I guess like that. Certainly works. Again, just make sure it's centered as well. This one down here is, wow, really off. It could be the spines that are off then, I'm not sure, but either way, as long as things connect is kind of the more important part. Make that connect up there. That's another, yeah, that one goes quite far down. And so does that one. So does this one. And then this just disappears off entirely. And also, check again, we have all of this down below. So delete all of that. Gone. Oh, whoops, there you go. So now we can go ahead and dynamesh it again and give it that good, proper, smooth to shape it all out. A little bit more there that we don't want. There we go. Double check it's all centered. Yep, I'm liking the look of this. And then what I do, go and just save. Let's check the polygroup quickly. The polygroups are, yeah, it's good. One big green polygroup, excellent. So I will actually merge these two together. Yeah, there you go, no spikes there, and that membrane there. I'm gonna merge these two together. Notice I haven't mirrored anything yet, it's still only on the right hand side. I'm doing this because from what I've seen in the concept art, the spines, well, first of all, are a bit longer, more like down here, and also seem to travel a bit more upwards like this. So I slightly misplaced it, but now I'm able to like really manipulate it, and as a result, I'm also giving it a bit of a gentle curve. But mainly I just wanted to be, you know, where it's supposed to be. These spikes here can be a little bit more embedded into the rest of the creature. This one here can actually stand to be quite a bit wider at the base to look like it's transitioning into these thick ones here. In fact, now that I've done this, what I want to do earlier is I can now increase the base of all of these without increasing the membrane, but still ensuring that everything is where it's supposed to be in terms of positioning. And now that I'm happy with that, I can go ahead and mirror and weld, and there we go. Ooh, look at him. God, does that look wild? This is looking correct from the front. Oh, actually, if anything, according to the concept art, this is meant to be more like, hold on. Oh, nothing merged. That's a miracle. Let's go ahead and just reposition this quickly. If anything, it's meant to be more like this. Oh, how interesting is that? Just want to go over and double check everything. We'll move it down a little bit then. Yeah, go over and double check everything. I think everything is where it's supposed to be. Move that just a little bit. Oh, whoops. Move that a little bit more inwards like that. Make it longer, if anything. There we go. I could probably do this, which is more indicative of the concept art, but that might be a problem for animation later. So I'll let everyone else on the team like figure out how that can be positioned, because I'm sure it can be bent in rigging or like in animation in the idle, but I don't want to like permanently put it into that position here. I think T-pose is better. I'm having a bit of a hard time positioning this the way I want to because it's centered, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the symmetry and do a big dramatic change. We want to embed these bits a bit more. There we go. And we'll just flip and re-enable mirror and meld, re-enable symmetry. Yep, and that is looking much more like it. Oh my god, he is coming together. I think realistically, I'm kind of at the point now where I just need to merge everything together and that's pretty much my job done. There is a couple of more things I would normally do, such as, again, merge all the spines into the rest of the creature. But, again, don't want to make anything too permanent. So, I think it's now time for probably the most satisfying part, and that is finally, going to go ahead and save again, and I'm going to save a backup. It is time to finally merge all the muscles into the body. In terms of T-pose, actually, let me just quickly organize all the files first. So from this point onwards, it turns out that all of my recording was done with my microphone off, which is really frustrating. So I'm afraid all of this here, you're not going to get any like explanations with, but I really hope that visually it's clear what's going on. I really wish the commentary was included because it's a lot easier to talk about my process during than it is to look at it afterwards. So I'm really sorry about that, but nonetheless, I am planning to live stream a lot more this year, live stream all my projects more on YouTube as well as Twitch. I don't think I've ever done it on YouTube before. Not on this channel anyway. And I'm also hoping to revive my creative channel, which yes, I have a creative channel. And I'm hoping to revive that to just stick all of my ZBrush speed projects over, and hopefully just over the course of time there'll be more and more things for people to learn from if they're interested in just more of this process, whether to learn from or you're just entertained by it. I'm sorry this kind of became more of a, hey, watch me draw things instead of, you know, a proper tutorial, but at the same time I did explain everything to the best of my ability, minus this last bit here, so I really hope it was helpful. But again, like I said, there'll be more opportunities to see more work from me and more opportunities to ask me questions, and I can answer and demonstrate things in the future. Either way, this was a sick creature to work with. This is such an awesome concept. DragonHeart, thank you so much for allowing me to do this, to use your creature and concept to make this video, because it did make the process longer. But due to the nature of this creature, all these spine membranes, this split jaw, there were so many different things I was able to explain and show off that I wouldn't have been able to on another creature, so this really did end up being the best and perfect teaching subject. So thank you so much, and again, like I said guys, I really hope this helped you. I know it's very ZBrush orientated, but I'm hoping that a lot of the ideas and logic can be applied to other programs, fingers crossed. And hopefully in the near future I can also demonstrate other aspects such as animation and rigging and programming when I learn that myself. Finally bring my own creature to life as well as others, and then hopefully teach even more then as well. This is really awesome, I really enjoy this. Okay, this video's gone on long enough. Thank you again so much for watching. I'll go ahead and play the music and you can enjoy the rest of the video. Thank you guys, and I'll see you all again next time. Cheers.